Hiya, welcome to the Garden Whisper. I'm Ed, and this little guy you see here is CK, my trusted gardening helper. Have you ever found yourself a bit stumped when your plant-obsessed mates throw around words like botanical name, hybrid, cultivar, and genus? You've nodded along, hoping no one will notice that it all sounds like Dothraki to you. Well, fret not. Today, we're going to help you with essential gardening words you always wanted to know, but were too afraid to ask. Even Professor CK will make an appearance. Before you know it, you'll be gabbing about genus and species with the best of them. Just a heads up, my name's not Wikipedia, and I'm not a dictionary. So, although we will not cover gardening words from A to Z, we'll focus on the words that'll turn you from a novice into a practical gardener. And hey, you might even get a few impressed nods at your next garden party. But hold on, before we put on our language learning hats, do me a quick favor. If you enjoy our videos and want to see more, please do hit the like button, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. Now, let's dig into our gardening glossary, shall we? Life cycle. The annuals are your summer flings. They sprout, bloom, and then pass on all in one growing season. You'll need to replace these each year, which can get a bit spendy for the new gardeners among us. However, they are excellent for adding a splash of color to your flower beds, pots, and hanging baskets and the edge of a walkway. Moving on to perennials. These are your long-term companions. They stick around for more than one growing season and can even endure the chill of winter. A few examples of these steadfast buddies are asparagus, strawberries, sage, and basil. Lastly, we have biennials. These fellas take it slow, requiring 2 growing seasons to complete their life cycle. They spend the first year establishing their leaves and roots, and in the second, they burst into blooms, produce seeds, and then bid adieu. Names. Let's start with the term common names. They are like nicknames, easy and familiar. So, when your mum calls a plant baby's breath, she's using a common name. It's straightforward, but here's the catch: it can lead to a right muddle. That's because common names can change from place to place. An English bluebell is the Dolling hyacinth hoides non-scripta. But head to Scotland, and they are referring to a completely different late summer beauty, the Campanula rotundifolia. To avoid this confusion, there are botanical names, the scientific monikers that are standardized and accepted worldwide. These usually have 3 parts: the genus, species, and occasionally, a variety. All plant names typically conform to the following widely recognized rules. International Code of Nomenclature for Algae, Fungi, and Plants. And for cultivars, the International Code of Nomenclature for Cultivated Plants. Plant naming is more technical than most may realize, and adheres to very distinct rules. But more on that another time. Now, let's talk about cultivars. This is a fancy term, a blend of cultivated and variety, as you might guess. These plants don't occur naturally but are bred by humans, like the famous Red Delicious or Granny Smith apples. And if you're thinking this could be a business opportunity, you're right. With plant breeders' rights, you can register your cultivar as your own property, license it, and even collect royalties. Lastly, we have hybrids. These plants are the offspring of 2 genetically different parents, typically of the same species but different varieties. This can happen naturally, thanks to our buzzing bee buddies, or intentionally, due to human cultivation. Form. First up, we have herbaceous plants, or as we like to say, the non-woody ones. These are your annuals, perennials, bulbs, and grasses. They have soft, flexible stems. Next, we have the woody plants, think trees, shrubs, and vines. These lads have bark or other hard tissues. Now, on to the term hardy. It's used for plants that could take a cold winter on the chin and still thrive. They are the type who'd wear shorts in a snowstorm, tough as nails. These are. Half-hardy plants are a bit more sensitive. They can handle a cold snap, but the frost would give them a good bit of trouble. And then we have tender plants. They are the sensitive souls that can't handle freezing temperatures at all. A bit like me during the Falls Creek winters. Ever heard of evergreen and deciduous plants? Well, evergreen are the forever youthful ones, staying green all year round. On the other hand, deciduous plants lose all their leaves in fall, only to sprout a fresh set in spring. Type. Let's start with trees. Now, trees are, well, trees. You know, those large single-stemmed beings, the wise old patriarchs of the plant kingdom. Nothing like stretching out under a good old oak. But let's move on to shrubs, which are like the smaller siblings of trees. These multi-stemmed chaps often stand less than 15 to 20 feet tall, and without a trim, they might just overgrow into thick and wild eyesores. It's time to climb to new heights with our leafy mates, the climbers, like vines. These are the ones that have decided to defy gravity and sprawl up, using whatever they can latch onto for support. They have a natural instinct to reach skywards, in their constant quest for the sun. Next up, we're going underground with bulbs. These smart plants stuck all they need for their life cycle into an underground storage unit, ready for harsher times. You'll recognize some of these as the heralds of spring: tulips, daffodils, and lilies, bursting forth in a riot of colors after a long winter's nap. Roses now, they're the prima donnas of the plant world. Often mistaken for bulbs, they are actually not. But we'll love them all the same, don't we? Let's talk corms. These are also underground storage structures, but they're swollen stems rather than modified leaves. When you slice them open, they are solid through and through, rather than layered like an onion bulb. You can find corms on plants like crocus, gladioli, and cyclamen. On the subject of underground structures, I have to mention tubers. These swollen stem bases or roots store water and nutrients, allowing plants to survive in unfavorable conditions. Tubers are chunky and rounded, and have growing points, or eyes, from where the plant sprouts. The next time you're enjoying chips or a baked potato, remember that you're eating a tuber. And if you've got a sweet tooth, the sweet potato is a root tuber you might be familiar with. Let's take a quick trip up the mountains, shall we? Alpines are the adventurous plants that thrive on rocky terrain and high altitudes, much like climbers going for the summit. In contrast, we have succulents, who've decided they are quite alright with dry environments. Thank you very much. These plants have thick, fleshy stems and leaves that store water, helping them survive where many other plants can't. Some popular examples include aloe vera, jade plants, and various species of cacti. Yes, all cacti are succulents, but not all succulents are cacti. Then we have cycads, the royalty of seed plants. These have a stout, woody trunk topped with a crown of large, stiff, evergreen leaves. But don't be fooled by their rugged exterior. These plants are, sadly, on the brink of extinction due to their slow growth and living in endangered habitats such as tropical rainforests. In another corner of the plant world, we find the lichens. These remarkable organisms are the result of a partnership between algae or cyanobacterium and fungi. This symbiotic relationship creates something completely new and distinct. In the realm of aquatic life, we find algae, a diverse group of photosynthesizing organisms. From microscopic forms to towering seaweeds, algae can take many forms, all without needing roots, stems, or flowers. Let's now turn our gaze downwards to moss, those lovely, low-growing plants that decorate our forest floors and garden paths. Last, but certainly not least, we have ornamental grasses. These bring beauty and texture to any garden, moving gracefully in the breeze and providing aesthetic points of interest even in the colder months. Design. Let's start with hedges, the neat green lines that give your garden a tidy, bordered look. These plants are the fence substitutes, placed along the edges of your property. Next, consider raised beds, a gardening technique where the soil is elevated above the ground level and usually enclosed in some manner. Picture a luxurious flower bed. That's a perfect example of a raised bed garden. Then there's ground cover. These are the plants that carpet your garden, protecting the precious topsoil from erosion and drought. The most common ground cover is grass. But hey, who says we can't shake things up a bit? You could use vines, moss, or even roses. Another key player in the gardening game is mulch. This is a layer of material you apply to the soil's surface. Mulching is kind of like putting a comfort blanket on your soil. It conserves moisture, improves soil fertility and health, reduces weed growth, and let's face it, it's pretty pleasing to the eye as well. Routine care. Now, let's move on to some key gardening techniques, starting with pruning, which is like giving your plants a trim at the hairdressers. It's the process of removing certain parts of a plant to improve its performance, health, and overall look. We've also got deadheading, not to be mistaken for lopping off heads from zombies. Instead, it's the act of removing spent flowers from your plants. Then there's twining. This is when you give a helping hand to a vine, encouraging it to grow upwards by winding around a supporting structure. It's a bit like cheering on CK as he tries to climb onto the sofa. Gotta give a little support. Grafting, on the other hand, is like a medical procedure for your plants. This technique attaches living pieces from two different plants together so that they function as one, a bit like Frankenstein, you could say. It's like combining the best of both worlds to create the perfect plant. Next, let's touch on hottiness zones. These are regions which are defined by the minimum temperatures that plants can survive in. This is such a massive topic, and trust me, we'll be dedicating an entire video to break it down. Permaculture. It's like creating a green utopia, where everything is sustainable and works in harmony. This holistic view of land management ranges from town planning and architecture to rewilding common spaces and managing water resources. And lastly, we have composting. Composting is all about repurposing decomposed organic matter, transforming what might seem like waste into a treasure trove of nutrients. This process begins by gathering and combining natural waste materials. Think fallen leaves, leftover vegetable peels, even the coffee grounds from your morning brew. These bits and pieces are mixed together in a compost pile or bin and left to decompose over time, aided by the natural forces of weather, bacteria, and beneficial insects. Compost is packed with nutrients that are essential for plant health and growth. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the end of our garden glossary. Now, you can be the know-it-all at garden parties, speaking in bewildering terms that'll leave everyone scratching their heads and rolling their eyes in exasperation. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell so you won't miss our gardening adventures. Now, I've got 2 questions for you. 1. Do you use any of these gardening techniques in your own garden? 2. Was there a particular word or term at the start of your gardening journey that left you feeling puzzled or perplexed? Drop your answers in the comments below, and let's learn from each other. I'll leave you with the only thing I remember from my uni Spanish class. Adios. Happy growing and cheerio.